She was rejected by her mate and left to die beneath a blood-red moon. But when death came for her, something darker answered the call. He was the Vampire King, and that night, the broken she-wolf became Destiny's most dangerous weapon. Before we continue, please tell us where you're listening from in the comments section and sit back and enjoy this wonderful story. The night the blood eclipse rose, the sky bled red over the frozen mountains. Snow fell in thick, soundless sheets, covering the world in white silence. I remember how cold it was, not the kind that bites the skin, but the kind that burrows deep, freezing you from the inside. I stood before the pack house, barefoot in the snow. My breath came out in sharp clouds. Dozens of eyes watched me, wolves I had grown up with, trained with, laughed with. None of them looked at me now. Not really. Their eyes were full of shame, or pity, or fear. No one met my gaze. And there he stood, Aiden, my fated mate, the alpha heir. The one I had waited my whole life for. His voice was steady, though it cracked once, almost like he regretted it. By the law of the moon, I reject you, Seren Hale, as my mate. You are unworthy of this bond. The words hit harder than any blade. My mark, the silvery crescent burned into my wrist, flared like fire and then faded to ash. I gasped, falling to my knees, clutching it as pain flooded every part of me. The rejection tore through not just my body but my soul. I could feel the connection between us snapping strand by strand. Please, I whispered. Don't do this, Aiden. Please. He turned away. It's done. I looked around, searching for help, for anyone to speak up. My parents stood in the crowd, silent, their faces pale. My mother's eyes were wet, but she didn't move. My father looked down, ashamed. Someone say something, I begged. This isn't right. The alpha, Aiden's father, stepped forward. You are no longer of this pack. Leave before dawn, or you will be hunted as a rogue. The crowd murmured, a low ripple of agreement. I could barely breathe. The snow fell heavier, clinging to my hair, my skin, freezing against my tears. When I didn't move fast enough, 2 guards stepped forward. One grabbed my arm roughly, dragging me toward the edge of the clearing. No, I said, fighting weakly. Please. They threw me into the snow. My knees hit the ice hard. Behind me, laughter rose, cruel, sharp. The rejected Luna, someone sneered. Guess she wasn't good enough. Aiden didn't even look back. That hurt most of all. When the gates slammed shut behind me, the sound echoed like thunder. I stumbled into the forest, the trees swallowing me whole. Snow weighed down every branch. The air was bitter. Each breath scraped my throat raw. I kept walking. I didn't know where to go, only that I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I would die. The bond's pain pulsed through my chest, tearing at every beat of my heart. My wolf inside me whimpered, weak and fading. He rejected us, she whispered. We're nothing now. I know, I whispered back, choking on a sob. I know. Time blurred. My legs grew heavy, my vision dim. The wind howled, drowning out the sound of my own cries. Once, I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned, there was only snow. I fell more than once. Each time I forced myself up, the cold seeping deeper. The world around me blurred into white and red, the snow and the eclipse above, glowing like a wound in the sky. Finally, I collapsed beside a frozen river. The ice shimmered in the red moonlight. My fingers were numb. I couldn't feel my heartbeat anymore. The wind grew quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I guess this is it, I whispered to no one. You win, Aiden. You all win. The sky swam in my vision. The blood eclipse burned brighter, so bright it painted everything crimson. Somewhere deep in my chest, the last thread of my wolf's spirit flickered weakly. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the forest. Hoofbeats. Slow. Heavy. Growing louder. I tried to lift my head, but my body refused. My heart raced. Who would be out here in this storm? Wolves didn't ride horses. Humans didn't survive this deep in the wild. The hoofbeats stopped. Through the snow, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black, mounted on a horse the color of midnight. The wind bent around him, as if afraid to touch him. His presence alone made the air heavier, colder. I tried to crawl backward, my breath catching. "Stay away," I rasped. I mean it." The rider dismounted. The snow didn't dare crunch beneath his boots. He pulled down his hood, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. His eyes were silver, not the soft gray of a winter morning, but bright, sharp, inhuman. His hair was black as ink. His skin pale as carved marble. When his lips curved slightly, I saw the faint glint of fangs. A vampire. Worse, an alpha among them. He crouched beside me. His cloak fell around us both, blocking the wind. I could feel his cold aura pressing against my skin. "You're dying," he said simply. His voice was deep, smooth, yet heavy with command. "Who did this to you?" I tried to answer, but my throat was raw. "My pack." He studied me for a moment. Then, almost too softly to hear, he said, "The blood eclipse never lies." My eyelids grew heavy. "What?" His silver gaze burned brighter. "You are marked by it," he murmured. "By fate." And before I could speak again, before the darkness swallowed me, he whispered, "You will not die tonight." Then everything went black. When I woke, I expected snow. Cold. Death. Instead, I found warmth. I was lying on a bed of furs, soft and heavy, in a room lit by a roaring fire. Shadows danced across the stone walls. The air smelled faintly of smoke and steel and something else, something metallic, like blood. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then I sat up too fast, and pain shot through my chest. My body ached everywhere, but I was alive. A deep voice spoke from the shadows. "You shouldn't move yet." I froze. My eyes darted toward the sound. He stepped into the light, the rider from the forest. The man with the silver eyes. Up close, he looked even more unreal. His cloak was gone, revealing armor made of black leather etched with silver runes. Power rolled off him like heat from fire. He moved with the quiet grace of a predator who never needed to hurry. "Where am I?" I managed to whisper. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze unreadable. "In my hall. The fortress of Narkthurn." I frowned. The name meant nothing to me. Why did you bring me here?" His eyes flickered briefly to my wrist, to the faint scar where my mate's mark used to be. "Because the blood eclipse does not make mistakes." I shook my head, confused. "You're not making sense." He tilted his head slightly. "Do you remember the river?" "I remember dying," I said softly. "Then you were dying," he corrected. "But when I found you, your blood burned under the moon. It called to me." "I didn't call anyone." "No," he said. "But fate did." The fire cracked loudly between us. I stared at him, unsure if I was more afraid or angry. "What do you want from me?" His lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "You have spirit, even when broken. I see why the eclipse chose you." "Stop talking like that," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know what you mean." He stepped closer, his presence cold and magnetic. "You are not just a wolf. Something sleeps inside you. The night I found you, it stirred." I shook my head again, backing up until I hit the headboard. "You're wrong. I'm nothing. My mate," my voice cracked. "He rejected me. He said I was weak." His eyes flashed. "Then he is a fool." The words hit harder than I expected. No one had ever said that before. Not even my parents. He moved slower this time, lowering himself to my level so that his gaze met mine directly. "Tell me your name." "Seren," I said, voice small. "Seren," he repeated quietly, like tasting it. "I am Selreth, Emperor of the Shadow Court." I blinked. "Emperor?" He inclined his head once. "You are safe here, for now. Rest." "I don't trust you." He didn't seem offended. "Good. Trust keeps you alive." I studied him. "Why save me then?" He looked into the fire for a long moment before answering. "Because when I saw you under the blood eclipse, I saw what I have been searching for." My heart skipped. "And what is that?" His gaze met mine again, sharp, unreadable, ancient. "A sign that the world is about to change." Silence hung between us. The fire crackled. Outside, I could faintly hear the howl of wind against stone walls. I looked around, the room was huge, the ceiling arched so high it disappeared into shadows. Symbols carved into the walls glimmered faintly, veins of silver tracing through black stone. No wolf pack could have built this. I wrapped the fur tighter around me. I should go. He raised an eyebrow. Go? Into the storm? You wouldn't make it past the gate. I can't stay here, I said, standing shakily. Your people will kill me. His lips curved, just slightly. They will try, he said. If they value their lives so little. I frowned. You think you can protect me from an entire court? He stepped closer until the air between us hummed. I do not think, little wolf. I decide. The way he said it made my pulse jump. Not because of the threat, but because of the certainty. No one had ever spoken about protecting me with such finality. Not even my pack. Why do you keep calling me that? I asked softly. Little wolf. Because you are one, he said simply. But also because you are not only that. His gaze dropped to my wrist again. I followed his eyes and froze. The skin that had been burned and empty now shimmered faintly under the firelight. A new mark, silver and red, pulsed there, small, delicate, like a flame caught in motion. What is that? I whispered. The Blood Eclipse's gift, Selreth said, his voice low. The fire inside you has awakened. I shook my head, panicked. No, that's impossible. Wolves don't burn, he finished for me. No, not unless they were born under a different moon. I looked up sharply. What are you saying? He took a slow step forward, stopping just close enough for me to feel the chill rolling off him. That your kind cast you out because they were right about one thing. You don't belong to them. Then who do I belong to? I demanded. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming like liquid silver. To destiny, he said. And tonight, destiny brought you to me. My heart hammered in my chest. I didn't know whether to run or to listen. Every instinct screamed danger, yet something in his voice, the calm certainty, the weight of it, made part of me hesitate. I don't believe in destiny, I said finally. He smiled faintly. You will. Before I could reply, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. The fire flared higher, sparks dancing in the air. For a moment, I thought I saw shapes in the flames, wolves, wings, a burning moon. Then it was gone. I stared at the fire, shaking. What was that? He glanced toward the flames, eyes narrowing. The Blood Eclipse's echo. It lingers when it marks its chosen. I'm not chosen, I whispered. I'm cursed. Perhaps both, he said softly. But cursed things can still change the world. He turned toward the door. Rest, Seren. We will speak again when the storm ends. Wait, I called. If I'm, whatever you think I am, what happens now? He paused, his hand on the iron door handle. Now, he said without turning back. You learn who you truly are. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the flickering fire and the echo of his words. Outside, the storm howled against the fortress walls. I looked down at my wrist again. The silver mark pulsed faintly, warm against my skin like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I should have been afraid. I should have wanted to run. But for the first time since my rejection, I didn't feel hollow. I felt awake. The storm outside had quieted by morning, but the world around me still felt strange. I woke to silence, broken only by the steady crackle of fire in the stone hearth. The room was dim, the light from the flames casting long, wavering shadows on the dark walls. I sat up slowly, half expecting the cold to return, but warmth still wrapped around me. The heavy fur blanket smelled faintly of smoke and something metallic, like blood and old magic. For a while, I just sat there, listening. Somewhere deep in the fortress, faint sounds echoed, boots striking stone, the clatter of metal, distant voices murmuring in a language I didn't understand. The air itself seemed alive, humming with something that wasn't quite natural. I rose and went to the window. The glass was tinted black, but when I wiped away the frost, my breath caught. Outside stretched an endless landscape of mountains and fog, jagged peaks slicing through a sky that still glowed faintly red from the eclipse. A massive wall of black stone circled the fortress like a crown. Beyond it, nothing but snow and shadow. No wolf territory I had ever seen looked like this. When the door opened behind me, I spun around too fast, my heart lurching. A tall woman entered, her steps light but confident. She wore a long dark gown and a collar of silver. Her eyes, pale gold, glowed faintly even in the half-light. "Awake at last," she said, her voice smooth as silk but edged with something sharp. "You heal faster than I expected." "Who are you?" I asked warily. She smiled, showing a glimpse of fangs. "Selene. Advisor to His Majesty." "His Majesty? The one who brought you here," she said, tilting her head slightly. "The Shadow Emperor. I see he's already introduced himself." I hesitated. "He said his name was Selreth." Her smile widened. "He told you his name? How curious." Something in her tone made me uneasy. What's that supposed to mean? Only that he does not often speak it. To most, he is simply the Emperor. She studied me, her gaze sliding to my wrist where the faint silver flame mark glowed softly beneath my skin. Her eyes narrowed. "So it's true. The blood eclipse marked you." I pulled my sleeve down quickly. "I don't know what it means." "Then you are already in danger," she said softly. "Marks like that are never given without cost." Before I could reply, she gestured toward the open door. "Come. He waits for you." Every instinct screamed not to follow her, but curiosity and something else I couldn't name pushed me forward. The hallway outside was vast and cold, lit by torches that burned blue instead of gold. The walls were carved with ancient runes that pulsed faintly as we passed, like veins of living silver in the black stone. The ceiling arched high above, lost in darkness. "This place," I murmured. "It doesn't feel real." "It isn't," Selene said without looking back. "The fortress sits between realms. Neither daylight nor moonlight touches it unless the Emperor allows it." We turned a corner and entered a massive chamber. My breath caught again. It was like walking into a cathedral made of night. Black pillars rose like the trunks of an endless forest, each one carved with moving shadows that seemed to shift when I looked directly at them. At the far end stood a throne, carved from obsidian, lined with silver veins that glowed like lightning under glass. And upon it sat Selreth. He looked the same as before, cold, unreadable, his silver eyes catching every flicker of firelight. A black cloak swept down from his shoulders like a living shadow. When I entered, the air itself seemed to still. Selene bowed. "My lord." "She wakes." "Leave us," he said. His voice was calm, but it rolled through the hall like thunder. Selene inclined her head once, her eyes flicking toward me before she slipped out. I swallowed hard. "Why did you bring me here?" Selreth leaned forward slightly. "Because you should have died, yet you did not. That alone makes you interesting." "I didn't ask to be saved." "No," he said, "but something asked for you. The blood eclipse burns in your veins. It has not chosen anyone in centuries." I frowned. "You keep saying that like it means something. I don't even know what the blood eclipse is." He rose from the throne in one smooth motion. The room seemed to darken as he stepped closer. "It is an omen older than either of our races," he said quietly. "Every few hundred years, the moon bleeds red, and when it does, it awakens what was meant to sleep." "What does that have to do with me?" He stopped just a few feet away. "When I found you, the fire in your blood called to mine. You are not just a wolf, Seren." My pulse quickened. "Then what am I?" "Something between fire and shadow," he said. "Something lost and now found." I shook my head, trying to step back, but the air around him was thick, charged, like lightning before a storm. "That's impossible." "Is it?" His eyes glowed faintly. "Your pack rejected you because they feared you. Because even before this, they could sense you were not one of them." His words struck deep, cutting through every scar I had tried to hide. I wanted to argue, to shout at him, but part of me knew he was right. I had always been different. Even as a child, I'd felt too much, heard too much. My wolf had always been strange. "I don't belong anywhere," I whispered. "Then perhaps," he said softly, "you belong here." I stared at him. "In a fortress of vampires?" In a place that does not judge what it does not understand. His tone was calm, but his gaze burned through me, sharp and endless. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then he turned away, breaking the spell. You will stay here, he said. You will learn what you are. And if I refuse, then you may walk into the storm again, he said without turning. But you won't last an hour. I didn't answer. Partly because I didn't trust him, but mostly because I knew he was right. That night, long after he left, I sat by the window, watching the blood-red moon fade behind clouds. I didn't know what fate wanted from me, or why this vampire emperor spoke as if he had been waiting for me. But one truth settled heavy in my chest: I wasn't going home. Because home no longer existed. Days passed, though I couldn't tell how many. The sun never touched the fortress, only an endless red glow filtered through the clouds. I rarely saw Selreth, but his presence was everywhere. The guards bowed to his unseen will, the air itself seemed to move when he entered a room. Celine returned each morning to bring me food and questions. Do you dream? She asked once. Yes, I said carefully. Of what? Fire, I admitted. Always fire. She smiled faintly. Good. The blood eclipse never marks the week. But that fire wasn't just in my dreams. It had started to follow me when I was awake, tiny sparks along my fingers when I grew angry, warmth blooming in my chest when I remembered the snow, the rejection, the pain. The first time it happened, I dropped a glass cup, startled, and it melted before it hit the floor. When I told Celine, she only raised an eyebrow. You should tell him, she said. He'll want to see. I didn't want to. But that night, when I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, eyes glowing faintly gold instead of grey, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I went to find him. The guards outside the great hall didn't stop me, though their gazes were sharp and suspicious. The doors opened on their own as I approached. Inside, Selreth stood before the throne, a blade in his hand. Not steel, something darker, absorbing the light around it. He looked up when he sensed me. You've come. I hesitated near the door. Something's happening to me. He lowered the sword. Show me. I swallowed. I don't know how. Anger often helps, he said dryly. I stared at him. That's not funny. His lips curved slightly. It wasn't meant to be. I took a breath and held out my hand. Every time I remember what they did to me when they left me in the snow, it starts to happen. Then remember. I closed my eyes. The memories hit like knives, the laughter, the rejection, Aiden's cold voice saying you are unworthy. Rage and grief surged through me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Heat rushed up my arm. My skin glowed faintly beneath the surface, not red, but white, like moonfire. When I opened my eyes, Selreth was watching closely, his expression unreadable. Don't stop, he said quietly. Let it come. The fire spread up to my shoulder. It didn't hurt, it felt alive, pulsing with my heartbeat. Sparks danced from my fingers, floating in the air before fading. I can't control it, I whispered. You don't need to, he said. You need to understand it. He stepped closer, slowly, until he stood within reach. His presence steadied me somehow, the shadows around him cool against the heat burning through me. Look at me, he said. I did. Now breathe. I inhaled shakily. The fire dimmed, settling under my skin again. When I exhaled, it vanished completely. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was charged, humming with leftover energy. He broke the silence first. The flame doesn't seek destruction. It seeks balance. You are its vessel, not its victim. I don't want it, I said, my voice small. I just want to be normal again. There is no going back, he said simply. You died in that snow. What stands here now is something new. The truth in his tone hurt more than the words. Why me? I asked. Why not someone stronger, someone worthy? He tilted his head. Do you think worth is born from strength? I have seen warriors with power to shatter mountains, and they fell easily because they feared their own hearts. But you, little wolf, you survived being broken. I looked down. So I'm supposed to be your, what? Your weapon? His eyes flashed. No. My equal. The words shocked me so much I forgot to breathe. Equal. The prophecy does not speak of slaves or servants, he said. It speaks of two forces, flame and shadow, bound under one moon. I frowned. Prophecy? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the throne and touched one of the glowing runes carved into its armrest. The lights flared, forming symbols that hovered in the air, words written in a language I didn't know. What does it say? He looked at me over his shoulder. It says the Fireborn will rise again when the world begins to tear. And when she does, the Shadow King will find her, and together they will either save the realms or end them. I stared, heart pounding. That's just a story. Stories, he said, are often the only truths time remembers. I didn't know what to say. He turned fully to me again. Whether you like it or not, the blood eclipse has chosen. And I will not let it waste its choice. I didn't choose you, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His eyes glimmered, softening just slightly. Nor did I choose this. Yet here we are. The air grew heavy again, not frightening, just intense. For the first time, I saw something human flicker behind his cold exterior. Something weary. Finally, he said, you will learn to use your fire. Selene will arrange your training. And if I refuse, then it will consume you, he said. And I will not save you twice. He turned away, dismissing me with the smallest motion of his hand. But before I reached the door, his voice stopped me again. Seren. I turned back. His eyes caught the firelight, silver and ancient. Next time you feel the flame rising, don't run from it. Why? I asked softly. Because it does not want to destroy you, he said. It wants to remember you. I left the hall shaken, his words echoing in my head. That night, lying awake in the dark, I traced the faint glow beneath my skin. It pulsed like a heartbeat, not painful, not frightening. Just alive. And somewhere in the fortress, I knew Selreth could feel it too. Days bled into one another inside the fortress. There was no sunrise, no sunset, only a sky locked in twilight. The torches never went out, they burned cold and steady, like they didn't need air. Selene made good on her promise. Training began. At first, it was simple, learning to breathe through the heat that lived under my skin, to control it instead of fearing it. I learned that emotion fueled it most: fear, rage, grief. Any strong feeling could ignite me like a spark to dry wood. But the more I trained, the stranger it became. The fire did not only live in me, it listened. When I was calm, it rested. When I was angry, it flared as if alive, answering my thoughts before I spoke them. Sometimes, when I trained too long, the world blurred, and I would hear whispers not from anyone around me, but inside the flame itself. Voices that sounded ancient and familiar, calling me by a name I didn't know. It terrified me. On the fifth night, when sleep refused to come, I left my chamber. The fortress was silent, though never empty. Shadows seemed to shift even when I stood still. I didn't know where I was going until I found myself standing before the same hall where Selreth had first shown me the throne. The doors were closed, but they opened as I approached, like something inside had been waiting. He was there. Alone. Standing near one of the tall windows where faint crimson light leaked in from the sky. He wasn't wearing his armor, only a dark shirt that left the pale lines of old scars visible across his forearms. He looked less like an emperor and more like a ghost, or perhaps both. You shouldn't walk these halls alone, he said without turning. I couldn't sleep, I said quietly. The walls feel like they're breathing. They are, he said simply. This fortress is alive. It listens. That's comforting, I muttered under my breath. His mouth curved faintly, though he still didn't face me. You fear it. I don't trust anything that whispers when I'm alone, I said. Including my own fire. Good, he said. Fear teaches awareness. I hesitated, then stepped closer. What are these voices I keep hearing? He turned then, his eyes catching the dim light. Whispers from the blood eclipse. It awakened the part of you that belongs to it. It wants you to remember what you are. I don't want to remember anything, I said. I want this to stop. He studied me in silence. Then, slowly, he walked toward me. You can't stop what you were born for, Seren. You can only decide how it ends. Something in the way he said my name made my chest tighten. He stopped close enough that I could feel the cold air rolling off him. You still don't believe the bond between us exists, he said. I don't believe in bonds, I said. Not anymore. He reached out then, slow enough that I could have stepped back, but I didn't. His fingers brushed the inside of my wrist where the silver flame mark glowed faintly. The touch sent a rush through me, not pain, but heat. The mark pulsed beneath his fingertips. What do you feel? He asked softly. I swallowed hard. Like something woke up. He nodded once. It is the bond. No, I said quickly, pulling my hand back. No, I already had one. It destroyed me. I won't do this again. He looked at me, and for once, the power in his gaze dimmed. There was something almost human in it, weariness, maybe even regret. I know what broken bonds feel like, he said quietly. I have carried one for 1,000 years. I froze. What? He didn't look away. Before I was emperor, I was not so different from you. I once had a mate, a queen of my own kind. But she betrayed me for the promise of a god's power. When she died, I swore I would never bind myself again. Then why me? I asked. Because the blood eclipse chose differently, he said. And perhaps because I am tired of eternity. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hate him for his certainty. Another part wanted to ask what it felt like to live that long with nothing but ghosts for company. Instead, I said, you talk about destiny like it's a choice. It isn't, he said softly. But how you face it is. The silence between us stretched. The firelight flickered over his face, making his eyes gleam silver white. I should go, I said finally. He nodded once. You should. But when I turned to leave, I felt it, a pull deep in my chest, like an invisible thread tightening between us. I stopped, breath catching. He felt it too. His voice was low, rougher now. You feel it, don't you? I don't want to. Wanting changes nothing, he said. The blood eclipse doesn't ask for permission. His hand brushed my wrist again, this time more firmly, and the mark flared with light. The air hummed, the warmth from my skin spilling into his cold like water meeting flame. Selreth, I whispered, though I didn't know why. You are bound to me now, he said quietly. Not by will, but by fate. You were never meant for the wolf who cast you aside. My throat tightened. Stop saying that. He stepped closer, his voice softer but no less certain. I will not apologize for fate. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. My heartbeat matched the pulse beneath my skin. I couldn't move. Then he said, almost to himself, under the next blood moon, the bond will complete itself. Until then, you must learn to control what ties us. I don't want this, I said again, but my voice came out weaker this time. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, you will. He turned away then, leaving me standing in the half-dark, the mark on my wrist still burning softly like a secret that refused to die. By the time the next night fell, the entire fortress knew. Whispers spread faster than wind. Servants looked away when I passed. Guards stiffened but didn't meet my eyes. I could hear them when they thought I was out of reach. The wolf has bound the emperor. The blood eclipse mark glows in her flesh. She will ruin us all. Every word cut deeper than the last. Celine found me in the corridor near the old library. Her golden eyes gleamed faintly in the torchlight. They are restless, she said. Because of me, I said. Because of him, she corrected. He has not bound himself to anyone since the fall of the Shadow Queens. They fear what that means. I folded my arms. Then tell them it means nothing. It's not even real. Oh, it is real, she said. And that is what terrifies them. Before I could answer, the great bell of the fortress rang low and hollow, a sound that seemed to shake the air itself. Celine straightened. He calls the court. The what? The Council of Blood. Every noble in the realm will be there. I blinked. And why would I? Because, she interrupted, he will expect you to stand beside him. The throne hall was transformed. The long shadows were gone, replaced by blazing torches that lined the black pillars. Rows of vampires stood on either side of the walkway, their armor gleaming like oil. Their eyes burned red, gold, and silver, and every single one turned to watch as I entered. I tried to stand tall, but my stomach twisted. At the far end, Selreth sat upon the throne, his expression unreadable. When he saw me, his gaze softened only a fraction, but enough to make the court murmur. Selene led me forward and stopped at the steps below him. "Is this wise?" she asked quietly. He didn't look at her. "Wisdom has never moved fate." He rose from the throne, his cloak sweeping across the floor like living smoke. The room fell silent. "Last night," he began, his voice carrying easily, "the blood eclipse marked one among us." All eyes turned toward me. He continued, "She was found abandoned and dying, yet she lives. She carries the flame that even death could not extinguish." A murmur ran through the hall, low, tense, angry. "She is Wolf," someone hissed. "She reeks of mortality," another sneered. "She does not belong here," a third voice said. Selretha's eyes flashed silver. "Be silent." The power in his voice was enough to make even the boldest noble freeze. He looked back at me. "Step forward." My hands trembled, but I obeyed. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the vast hall. When I reached him, he turned to face the court again. "The blood eclipse never marks by mistake. It has chosen her, and through her, it has chosen this realm's future." "Blasphemy," one of the nobles spat. "The moon marks no wolves." Selretha's gaze turned toward the speaker, a tall man with pale skin and crimson eyes. "Would you challenge the eclipse itself, Lord Varin?" The noble's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Shadows curled at Selretha's feet, rising like smoke, twisting toward the man. He sank to one knee instantly. "Forgive me, my emperor." Selretha's tone remained calm. "Do not mistake tradition for truth. The blood eclipse has bound her to me, and that cannot be undone." The words hit the court like thunder. I stared up at him, stunned. "Bound?" I whispered. He looked down at me, voice low enough only I could hear. "Better they hear it from me than discover it through fear." "But..." He raised his hand slightly. The mark on my wrist flared, a faint red-gold light glowing through the sleeve. Gasps filled the hall. "She is mine," Selreth said. "Chosen by the blood eclipse itself. She is under my protection and my crown." The hall erupted into noise, shouts, protests, disbelief. "You would defy the old laws. She is a wolf. This is madness." Selreth lifted his hand again, and the torches dimmed all at once. The air grew cold. His shadows spread like ripples through the floor. When he spoke, his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "The next voice that rises against her rises against me." Silence fell instantly. He looked down at me again. "They will never accept you easily," he said. "But they will learn to fear you." I swallowed hard. "That's not what I want." "Want has little to do with survival," he said. "You must learn this quickly." He turned to the court one final time. "From this night forward, she will walk beside me. Address her as you would your queen." Queen. The word struck me harder than any wound. I didn't even know who I was anymore, a rejected wolf, a cursed girl with fire in her veins, and now, in front of an army of monsters, I was something else entirely. But when I met his gaze, steady and unwavering, something inside me shifted. I didn't feel weak anymore. Not like the girl in the snow. I stood straighter. The fire inside me stirred, faint but steady. And for the first time, the whispers around me were not only of fear but of something else. Wonder. The morning after the court's announcement, the fortress felt different. Eyes followed me wherever I went, silent, judging, full of suspicion. Vampires didn't whisper like wolves, they spoke with stares, with the air turning colder as you passed. I had been given new chambers near the Emperor's hall, beautiful but suffocating. The walls shimmered faintly, like they were made of shadow held in place by will alone. In the corner, a mirror reflected a woman I hardly recognized, hair tangled, eyes no longer soft gray but gold beneath the light, and a faint silver glow beneath her skin like fire trying to escape. Selene arrived early, as always. She never knocked. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice smooth as a blade. "Don't call me that," I muttered. "It's what you are now." She set a folded set of dark clothes on the table, a tunic and pants made of black leather, light enough to move in. His Majesty said you begin combat training today. Combat? I frowned. I can barely control the fire inside me. I might burn down the fortress. Then learn quickly, she said. Better you burn stone than bleed in front of the court. Her tone carried no warmth. Only practicality. I dressed in silence. The clothes fit like a second skin, cold at first, but as the fabric touched my skin, it shifted, molding to my form. I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. The rejected wolf I'd once been was gone. This version of me looked sharper, like something half forged, half reborn. When Celine led me to the training yard, dawn had no color here, only gray light filtered through the crimson sky. Vampires stood in a circle, waiting. Their eyes followed me with the quiet hunger of predators. Selreth stood at the center. No throne, no crown, no cloak. Just black armor and a sword that drank the light. When he saw me, his expression didn't change. You came. You ordered, I said. He tilted his head slightly. Do you always obey orders? Only the ones that make sense. A faint curve touched his lips. Then you should disobey me more often. He tossed me a training blade lighter than his, but still heavy enough to sting my palms. This isn't about killing, he said. It's about control. Fire will answer anger first, but if you give it direction, it becomes more than rage. Fine, I said. Then teach me. He moved like water, every motion precise, deliberate. His sword cut through the air, striking my blade with just enough force to test me but not enough to harm. Again, he said each time I faltered. I lost count of how many times I hit the ground. My palms bled, my body ached, but I kept standing. Each time I rose, the whispers of the watching vampires grew quieter. Hours passed. When I finally dropped the sword, gasping, Selreth caught it before it hit the ground. You learn quickly, he said. I glared. You call this quick? For someone who was dying in the snow a week ago? Yes. I wanted to argue, but his voice wasn't mocking. It was matter-of-fact, and that, somehow, made it worse. He turned away, speaking loud enough for the gathered nobles to hear. Remember her face. You may despise her, but you will respect her. The blood eclipse does not choose weaklings. When he dismissed them, no one argued. The crowd dispersed, though not without dark looks. Celine stayed behind. She handed me a cloth to wipe the blood from my knuckles. They won't stop testing you, she said softly. I don't expect them to. Good, she said. Then maybe you'll survive. That night, as I washed the dirt from my skin, I found myself staring at the faint glow still flickering under my palm. No matter how hard I scrubbed, it remained like fire trapped beneath glass. When I closed my eyes, I saw flashes not of my own life, but someone else's. A vast battlefield under a burning moon. Wings of fire. A man cloaked in shadow standing at the edge of the world. And a voice, soft and ancient, whispering my name. Seren. I woke drenched in sweat, heart racing. The fire under my skin pulsed once, as if it had heard. The next day began in silence. No one came to fetch me. No one knocked. The fortress was eerily still, like the world itself held its breath. Then the screams started. I bolted from my chambers. The hallway outside was filled with running servants and the clang of steel. Smoke coiled under the ceiling. Somewhere deep within the fortress, an alarm bell rang. I followed the noise, my heartbeat wild. The smell of blood hit first, sharp and metallic. The throne hall doors were open. Inside, chaos. A dozen vampires surrounded Selreth, their weapons drawn. Not soldiers, nobles. Their eyes burned crimson, their fangs bared. Celine fought near the steps, her blade flashing. Selreth stood at the center, calm amid the storm, his sword a blur of darkness. Each movement was lethal, precise, but they kept coming. Stop! I shouted before I could think. Every head turned toward me. One of the nobles sneered. The wolf pretender shows herself. Before I could move, he lunged too fast for my eyes to follow. His blade aimed for my chest. Time slowed. Something deep inside me roared. The world went white. Fire exploded from my skin, pure, blinding flame. The air crackled. The noble's body hit the wall with a scream, engulfed in burning light. In seconds, he was ash. Silence fell. Every vampire in the hall stared at me, even Selreth. His silver eyes reflected the flames still curling around me, dancing like living things. I couldn't breathe. The power burned but didn't hurt. It felt right. Celine's voice broke the silence. "The Fireborn," she whispered. The word rippled through the court. Fear. Awe. Disbelief. Selreth stepped toward me, his sword lowering slowly. "Enough," he said quietly. The flames hesitated, as if listening. "Seren," he said again, "closer now. You're safe." I shook my head. "I didn't mean to." "I know." His hand lifted, stopping inches from my face. The shadows around him reached for the fire, cool and steady. Where they touched, the flames dimmed, folding back into my skin. When it was over, the only sound left was the faint crackle of torches. The hall was silent except for Selretha's voice. "Let this be your lesson," he said to the court. "The blood eclipse does not choose for mercy. It chooses for power." No one dared speak. He turned to me. "Come with me." I followed him wordlessly down a side corridor, my legs shaking. When we reached a smaller chamber, he closed the door and faced me. "You should not have been here," he said. "I heard the fighting. You could have died." I flinched. "So could you." That made him pause. His eyes softened, just slightly. "You should learn to be more afraid." "I'm tired of being afraid," I said quietly. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "You are reckless. But you are not weak. Tell that to the pile of ashes in your throne room." He didn't smile, but something in his expression shifted, pride, maybe, or understanding. "You did what they forced you to do. You showed them what it means to challenge fate." I sat heavily on the stone bench. My hands still trembled. "I killed him. He chose his death the moment he raised a blade to you," Selreth said. "You do not need to grieve fools." "I'm not like you," I said. "No," he agreed. "You are something rarer." He stepped closer, crouching in front of me so our eyes met. "Do you know what they will call you now?" I shook my head. "The Fire Queen," he said softly. "The one who stands beside the Shadow King." "I don't want a crown," I said. He gave a faint smile. "Neither did I. Yet here we are." The room went quiet again. The fire inside me had calmed, but I could still feel its echo like a heartbeat that wasn't entirely my own. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said, standing. "They will test you again. They always do. But you will learn. You will fight. And one day, they will bow not because I command it, but because you earn it. And if I fail?" He turned back, his gaze steady. "Then I burn with you." His words left no room for doubt. No hesitation. For a man who ruled through fear, he sounded almost human when he said it. That night, when I finally returned to my chambers, the fortress was quiet again. But the whispers were louder than ever. I could feel them in the walls, in the air, even in the firelight that refused to stay still. They no longer called me the wolf. They called me the Fire Queen. And though I wanted to deny it, a part of me, the part that had died in the snow and been reborn under the blood eclipse, didn't hate the sound. Outside, the sky glowed red again, faint but steady. I watched it until sleep claimed me. In my dreams, I saw fire and shadow moving together, not fighting, but dancing. And for the first time, the voice in the flames didn't whisper in warning. It whispered like a promise. "You are not his prey. You are his equal." The days that followed the attack blurred together. The court pretended obedience, but I could feel their eyes on me wherever I went, the fear in their silence, the hate hidden in their stillness. Selreth was never far. He didn't hover, but somehow, his presence lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. When I entered a hall, the torches flickered lower. When I spoke, the air itself seemed to listen. Celine continued my training, though her tone had changed. She was still sharp, but not as cold. Perhaps the sight of me turning a noble to ash had softened her opinion, or perhaps she had learned fear too. "You channel better now," she said one morning as I formed a circle of fire around my palm. But you hold back. I don't want to hurt anyone, I said. Then you'll never rule anything, she replied simply. Control isn't mercy, Seren. It's knowing when not to burn. That night, I found Selreth in the war chamber. The walls there were lined with maps drawn on black parchment, veins of silver marking borders and battlegrounds. The Empire stretched far beyond what I had imagined, a world hidden beneath the one I'd known. He looked up from a table strewn with scrolls. You should be resting. I couldn't sleep. He gestured to the empty space across from him. Then sit. I sat carefully. You're planning something. He didn't deny it. Rebellion brews. The nobles who fled after the failed assassination will return with others. I cannot afford weakness. And me? I asked. What am I in your plan? He met my eyes. You are what keeps them afraid enough to hesitate. I frowned. That's not a role I want. He gave a faint smile. Want has nothing to do with destiny. I'm starting to hate that word. He chuckled, an almost human sound. Good. Hatred sharpens understanding. Silence fell between us. The air was thick with heat and shadow. I stared at him, trying to read his face. You never rest either, do you? Rest, he said quietly, is a gift for the living. You are living, I said. You bleed. You breathe. I exist, he corrected. There's a difference. I leaned forward. Why do you act like you don't care if you live or die? He looked up, silver eyes meeting mine. Because I've done both too many times. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, you talk like someone waiting for the end. Perhaps I am, he said softly. Until you came. The words stole my breath. Selreth. He rose, moving toward me. I didn't move, though every part of me wanted to. He stopped only inches away, his shadow brushing against my skin. When fire meets shadow, he murmured, neither can destroy the other. They can only merge. His hand lifted, brushing my cheek. His touch was cold, but beneath it I felt the spark of something, not magic, not power, but recognition. The mark on my wrist flared. His eyes glowed brighter. Shadows curled around us like smoke, and the heat from my body reached for his cold like they'd always belonged together. I should have stepped back. I didn't. Why does it feel like this? I whispered. Because the blood eclipse does not bind lightly, he said. I looked up at him, heart pounding. And if I don't want it? He hesitated. Then, almost painfully, he said, then I will break it myself. The words were so quiet, I barely heard them. He let go of me, the warmth between us fading instantly. Leave, he said softly. Before I forget how to be merciful. I left without looking back. That night, I dreamed again of fire and shadow intertwined, of two figures standing on the edge of a burning world. And when I woke, the air in my room still shimmered with heat, as if my dream had almost escaped. The next morning began with unease. The fortress was too quiet. Even the guards looked uneasy, their gazes flicking toward the horizon where storm clouds gathered, not weather clouds, but something darker, unnatural. Selene found me in the corridor. The seer has arrived, she said. What seer? The Oracle of Varin, she said, voice low. He claims to carry a prophecy about the blood eclipse. I followed her to the great hall. It was dim again, the torches burning blue instead of gold. Selreth sat on his throne, unreadable as ever. Before him stood a man draped in torn robes, his eyes covered by a strip of black cloth. His voice, when he spoke, was rough but powerful, the kind of voice that sounded too old to belong to one body. My emperor, the seer said, bowing deeply. The eclipse speaks. It whispers of flame and shadow, bound together, destined to break or mend the veil. Selretha's tone was calm. Tell me what it says, seer. The old man lifted his head. When fire joins shadow, the world will tremble. If the bond holds, all realms will be renewed. If it shatters, the void will awaken and devour both night and day. A murmur spread through the gathered nobles. My stomach turned. The seer turned toward me, though his eyes were covered. You, fireborn, your blood sings of choice. You are the hinge between salvation and ruin. I froze. I didn't ask for this. He tilted his head. Neither did the moon when it bled. Selreth rose from his throne. Enough riddles. Speak plainly. The seer's lips twisted into a thin smile. You cannot escape what the blood eclipse began. Even your power cannot change what is written. I decide my fate, Selreth said. No, Shadow Emperor, the seer replied. You merely delay it. The hall darkened. Shadows gathered at Selreth's feet, rising like waves. Choose your next words carefully, Oracle. But before he could move, the seer lifted his hand and the torches went out. For a moment, the hall was pure darkness. When light returned, the seer was gone. Only his voice lingered, echoing faintly through the walls. Beware the hand that bleeds willingly, it said. For love will be the weapon that ends you both. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Selreth's jaw tightened. Search the fortress, he ordered. Find him. Selene bowed and hurried away. I stood frozen, my pulse loud in my ears. What did he mean? Nothing worth remembering, Selreth said. That didn't sound like nothing. He turned to me, his expression hard. Prophecies exist to trap fools who mistake them for truth. Then why do you look afraid? I asked. His eyes flashed silver. Because I remember what it feels like to believe them. He walked past me, cloak sweeping the ground. Stay in your chambers tonight. Do not open your door for anyone. What's happening? I asked. Rebellion, he said. The seer's words will spread faster than fire. He left before I could speak again. That night, the fortress shuddered with unease. Thunder rolled in the distance, though no rain came. I tried to rest, but my dreams were restless flashes of Selreth surrounded by fire, the sky splitting open, and a voice whispering, "Love will be the weapon that ends you both." When I woke, the air was thick with the smell of smoke. I ran to the window and froze. The mountains in the distance burned. Not from sunlight, but from armies carrying torches, marching toward the fortress. Selene burst into the room, armor half-fastened, eyes sharp. They've begun, she said. Who? The nobles who fled, and worse. Wolves, humans, void spawn. Every enemy the Emperor has ever made. My blood turned cold. What do? We fight, she said grimly. And pray the eclipse didn't mark you for ruin. She turned to leave, then stopped. If he falls, she said quietly, the bond between you will tear you apart. Do you understand? I nodded, throat tight. When she was gone, I stared out at the burning horizon. For the first time, I realized what the seer had meant. This wasn't just about thrones or crowns. The blood eclipse hadn't marked me to survive, it had marked me to choose. Fire or shadow. Salvation or ruin. And as the sky turned red again, I felt the mark on my wrist burn brighter than ever. Somewhere below, I could hear Selreth's voice rallying his armies, low and commanding. And though fear twisted in my chest, something else rose with it, a quiet certainty that whatever destiny waited, it would not decide for me. I would. The fortress trembled with the sounds of war long before the battle reached its gates. Drums echoed across the mountains, a rhythm of defiance and death. Smoke rose from the horizon, staining the sky black. Every corridor buzzed with motion, servants running, guards arming, the clang of steel on stone. I moved through it all as if in a dream, my heart caught between fear and something I couldn't name. Selreth hadn't slept for days. When I found him in the war chamber, he stood over the maps again, his armor dark as night. His hands, pale against the black metal, were marked with fresh cuts, a blood-binding spell etched into his own skin. What are you doing? I asked. Preparing for what's coming, he said without looking up. You can't fight them all. He raised his gaze. I don't intend to. I intend to end them. That's the same thing. No, his voice softened. It's faster. I crossed the room, pushing the map aside. You think this is strength, carrying everything alone. But it isn't. Let me help. You have helped, he said. By living. That's not enough. He sighed, finally meeting my eyes. If I let you fight beside me and you die, the bond will kill me too. Do you understand? Then we live or die together. Seren. No, I took a step closer, the air between us crackling. You call me your equal, your queen, but you still treat me like a weapon you're afraid to use. His jaw tightened. Because I know what happens when love becomes a weapon. The words hung heavy between us. For a long moment, he said nothing more. Then he turned away, muttering a low command. The shadows on the floor shifted, swirling into symbols I didn't recognize. Your chamber is warded, he said. Stay there until I return. I reached for his arm. Selreth, please. He froze. When his eyes met mine, the world seemed to stop. Don't make me choose between you and the realm. And then he was gone. Hours passed like centuries. The sounds of war grew louder, steel clashing, screams echoing through stone. The air inside the fortress burned with power. My mark pulsed in time with my heartbeat, responding to something unseen. I couldn't stay hidden. Every instinct screamed to move. The bond between us tugged like an invisible thread, pulling me toward him. I followed it through the halls until I reached the outer gate. The battlefield stretched beyond a nightmare of fire and shadow. Armies clashed beneath a blood-red sky. Wolves in silver armor tore through vampires in black. Human soldiers fired arrows tipped with runes that burned on impact. And in the center stood Selreth. He moved like a storm, his sword leaving trails of darkness that devoured light. Every strike shattered ground, every movement commanded terror. Yet even he bled, cuts across his cheek, smoke rising from wounds where magic had struck him. I ran to him. You're hurt. He turned sharply, eyes wide. You shouldn't be here. A shout rose behind me, an enemy soldier aiming a blade at my back. Before I could react, Selreth moved faster than sight, cutting the attacker down. Go back inside, he snarled. No. I shouted back. You need me. As if to prove my words, a new force swept over the field, a wave of black energy that burned everything in its path. Selreth raised a shield of shadow, blocking most of it, but the strain showed. He stumbled, blood dripping onto the frozen earth. Without thinking, I grabbed his hand. Let me in, I whispered. What are you? The fire beneath my skin ignited. Light and shadow collided, my heat pouring into him, his darkness anchoring me in return. The ground beneath us cracked, the air turning molten. His eyes widened in shock. Seren, stop. I can't, I gasped. It's choosing. The energy surged, wrapping around us both. The bond that had pulsed faintly between us now flared alive, connecting our souls completely. And in that moment, I felt everything, his pain, his loneliness, the centuries of silence and guilt he carried. He felt my memories too, the snow, the rejection, the cold. Two lives merging, fire and shadow weaving into one. The power burst outward, consuming everything nearby. Enemies fell where they stood. The battlefield fell silent. When the light faded, Selreth collapsed, his breathing shallow. I dropped beside him, shaking. No, no, stay with me. He looked up weakly. The bond sealed itself. Then we'll survive, I said. He gave a faint smile. You sound certain. Because you told me I'm fate's mistake, I whispered, tears burning. Maybe it's time we prove it wrong. His eyes softened. You shouldn't have done this. I'd do it again. And before I could stop myself, I leaned down and kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't gentle. It was everything, rage, love, defiance, all of it burning through the bond between us. The world vanished, leaving only fire and shadow, breath and heartbeat. When I pulled away, his wounds had closed. My skin glowed faintly gold where our hands touched. The connection between us was complete now, irreversible. Now you can't get rid of me, I said, voice trembling. He smiled, small, tired, and full of something that looked a lot like hope. I wouldn't even if I could. Then his head fell back, and he was unconscious. They carried Selreth back into the fortress at dawn. The battlefield was quiet, not because peace had come, but because both sides were too afraid to move. The power that had erupted when the bond sealed still lingered in the air, heavy as fog. Celine met us at the gate, her face pale. What have you done? He'll live, I said. She stared at the faint glow under my skin, the mark now burning brighter, shaped like intertwined flame and shadow. You've bound your souls completely. Do you understand what that means? I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, she said sharply. But now your fates are one. If he dies, so do you. I looked down at Selretha's still face as the guards carried him past. Then I'll make sure he doesn't. For 2 days, he didn't wake. The court grew restless. Rumors spread that the emperor had fallen. Whispers of rebellion thickened like smoke. On the 3rd day, the war council met without him. I entered their chamber uninvited. 12 nobles stood around the obsidian table, some I recognized from the court, others from the battlefield. Their expressions shifted between shock and disgust as I walked in. You have no place here, said Lord Varin, the same noble who had once called me a curse. I'm the one keeping your emperor alive, I said coldly. You're the reason he's dying, another hissed. You poisoned him with your bond. My hands clenched, sparks flickering at my fingertips. Say that again. He sneered. You're a mistake the blood eclipse made. Nothing more. Flames shot up from the floor around him, forcing him back. I'm getting tired of being called nothing. The room filled with light and heat. Shadows twisted on the walls, responding to me. For the first time, I felt their shape, Selretha's power still woven into mine, answering even though he slept. Sit down, I said. Every chair scraped as they obeyed. Fear replaced fury. I walked to the head of the table. Here's how this works now. You will send word to every city that the emperor lives. You will double the guard. And anyone who spreads lies about his fall will burn for it. You think you can rule in his place? Varin spat. No, I said. I'm not ruling in his place. I'm ruling with him, whether he's awake or not. The mark on my wrist flared, casting gold light across the table. You call me Fire Queen, I said. Then start acting like it. No one argued. Not allowed. When I left the chamber, the doors slammed shut behind me with a sound like thunder. That night, I sat beside Selretha's bed. The fortress was silent again, but I could feel unrest simmering beyond the walls. He lay still, pale but breathing, his hand cold in mine. I think you'd laugh if you could see me now, I whispered. Ordering nobles around like I belong here. The fire under my skin pulsed softly, syncing with the faint rhythm of his heartbeat. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. But you told me to stop running from the fire. So here I am. The air stirred. For a moment, I thought it was only my imagination, but then his fingers twitched. His eyes opened slowly, silver gleaming faintly in the dark. You disobeyed me, he murmured. I smiled through the tears threatening to fall. You were asleep. Someone had to keep the world from falling apart. His lips curved slightly. You sound like a queen. I'm getting used to it. He exhaled, his hand tightening weakly around mine. They won't stop coming. I know. He studied me for a long moment. You've changed. So have you, I said softly. You almost died trying to protect me. I told you, he said, voice barely above a whisper. If you fall, I burn. I leaned closer, resting my forehead against his. Then we stand together. He smiled faintly. Together. Outside, thunder rolled again. But this time, it didn't sound like war. It sounded like a heartbeat, the world itself waiting for what came next. I didn't know if we would survive what was coming. But I knew this, we would not face it apart. And as dawn broke across the mountains, for the first time since my exile, I felt something that almost resembled hope. The morning after Selreth woke, the fortress was alive again, but not with peace. Soldiers marched in constant rhythm through the courtyards. Messengers ran through the halls. The sky itself seemed to hang lower, the blood eclipse still casting its red haze over the mountains. The war was not over. It had only paused to breathe. Selreth stood in the courtyard when I found him, already armored, the weight of his blade resting easily in his hand. His wounds had healed, though a faint line of silver still traced along his throat, proof of how close death had come. You should still be resting, I said. He glanced at me. If I rest, they will lose faith. The court believes the emperor bleeds, they must see he still stands. And what do you believe? I asked. That I cannot fall again, he said quietly. Not now. The cold wind whipped through the courtyard, but the space around him was warm. My fire had never left his shadow. I could feel it pulsing faintly between us, our bond alive and steady. Selene appeared behind me, her golden eyes sharp. The council waits, she said. And there's more. The Northern Scouts found signs of something. She hesitated. What kind of something? I asked. She met my gaze. Creatures that don't belong to this world. A chill ran through me. Void spawn? She nodded. The seer's words are spreading. The enemy believes the void can be opened again, and they're trying to prove it. Selretha's hand tightened on his sword. Prepare my horse. We ride within the hour. You can't go alone, I said. He turned to me. You think you could stop me? No, I said. I think you'll need me. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Then stay close. We rode north. The world beyond the fortress looked half-dead, forests frozen in ash, rivers blackened by magic. The further we went, the worse it became. The air felt wrong, too heavy, too still. When we reached the old battlefield, the ground was cracked and glassy, as though fire had once consumed it. The smell of iron hung thick in the air. Here, Selene said, dismounting. They opened a rift. The center of the field pulsed faintly, a dark scar in the earth, breathing light like a wound refusing to close. What's on the other side? I asked. Selretha's voice was low. Nothing we want to see. Before anyone could move, the ground shook. The rift widened, splitting open. From it crawled shapes, twisted, half smoke, half bone, moving like liquid darkness. Their eyes glowed with void light. Selene drew her blade. We have to close it. I didn't think. The fire inside me flared, answering the danger before fear could. I stepped forward, lifting my hand toward the rift. Heat flooded my veins. Flames burst from my skin, not the soft gold of before, but brilliant white, wild and alive. Selreth started, but it was too late. The fire leapt from me, striking the creatures first. They shrieked and melted into ash. The rift resisted, pulsing harder, dragging the energy inward like a living thing. I pushed harder, shouting against the roar of power in my ears. Then the fire changed. It wasn't just mine anymore. I felt it stretching, calling something older, deeper, a force buried in blood and time. For a heartbeat, the world went silent, and I saw her. A wolf made of light, her fur burning gold, her eyes bright as the sun. Who are you? I whispered. Lunaria, the voice answered, echoing inside my skull, soft and endless. The first firewolf. You carry what I left behind. Then the vision was gone, and I collapsed. When I woke, I was back at the fortress. Selreth sat beside the bed, his expression unreadable. You were out for a day, he said. What happened? You closed the rift, he said. The void spawn burned. But the power you used nearly killed you. I swallowed hard. I saw her. A wolf made of light. He leaned closer. What did she say? That I carry what she left behind. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he whispered, the firewolf bloodline was thought extinct. Maybe it isn't, I said. His hand brushed mine, almost hesitantly. It changes everything. It changes nothing, I said softly. I'm still me. No, he said. You are more. I looked at him. Then teach me to be what I am before it kills us both. He smiled faintly. Spoken like a queen. The days that followed were filled with training, not of sword or spell, but of control. Selreth taught me to balance fire with shadow, to let his magic absorb my excess instead of burning through me. When our powers joined, they no longer clashed, they danced. Each night, the bond between us grew stronger, alive with a rhythm that felt older than either of us. Sometimes I could feel his thoughts before he spoke them. Sometimes, in my dreams, I heard his voice whispering my name even from across the fortress. It should have scared me. It didn't. But peace never lasted long in the Shadow Court. The rebellion struck at dawn. It began with silence, the kind that feels wrong, heavy, like the air itself waits for something terrible. Then came the sound of steel. The first explosion shook the walls, tearing through the east wing of the fortress. Smoke filled the corridors. Bells rang. Screams followed. Celine burst into my room, blade already drawn. They've breached the gates. The council betrayed us, they opened the wards from inside. Where's Selreth? I shouted. In the throne hall, holding the line. I grabbed my armor, still half untied, and ran. The fortress was chaos. Guards clashed with rebels in the corridors, magic flared and died in bursts of light. I cut through the smoke, my fire guiding me. When I reached the hall, I froze. Half of Duskspire burned. The massive obsidian doors had been torn from their hinges. The throne itself cracked in two. In the center of the ruin, Selreth fought like the storm I had first seen him as, shadow and steel weaving through enemies. But even he was outnumbered. I raised my hand, summoning fire. The flames answered instantly, roaring across the floor, cutting through the attackers. The heat didn't hurt me anymore, it felt like part of my breath, part of my heartbeat. Selreth turned, relief flashing briefly in his eyes. You shouldn't be here. I told you, I'm not staying behind anymore. He smiled grimly. Then burn with me. We fought side by side, fire and shadow merging in every strike. When his sword cut through one enemy, my flames consumed another. The floor shook with power. Together, we were unstoppable. But victory came at a price. A roar echoed from the shattered gate, a sound not human, not wolf, not vampire. Something vast moved in the smoke. And then I saw it, a creature of the void, half shadow, half flesh, with glowing veins of blue fire running under its skin. It moved like liquid darkness, swallowing everything it touched. Celine's voice shouted from somewhere behind. It's feeding on the magic. Don't let it reach the heart stone. Selreth raised his blade. We hold the line here. The monster lunged. Selreth met it head-on, his sword cutting deep, but the creature didn't fall. Instead, it wrapped around him, claws sinking into his armor. He staggered, trapped. Selreth! I screamed. Without thinking, I ran forward, flames already rising. I called every spark, every ember, the fire answering like it had been waiting. The heat was unbearable, the world turning white. Seren, no, he shouted, but I didn't stop. I struck. The explosion tore through the hall. The creature screamed, dissolving into smoke. The blast sent me flying. When I hit the ground, the stone beneath me cracked, glowing faintly gold. Everything went quiet. My skin burned, but I felt nothing. Selreth crawled to me, his armor scorched, his eyes wide. Seren. I looked up, dazed. The flames around me were white now, pure and blinding. They didn't burn, they healed. The air shimmered, and for a heartbeat, I saw her again, Lunaria, the firewolf. Her voice echoed inside my mind. This is your gift and your curse. You can save what he cannot, but every fire takes something in return. What do I have to give? I whispered. Everything. The vision vanished. The fire surged outward, sealing the broken gates, repairing the shattered walls, burning away the remaining shadows. The fortress itself seemed to breathe again. When it was done, I fell forward into Selreth's arms. The flames faded, leaving only ash and silence. You closed the rift, he said softly, holding me. You saved us. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My body felt numb, heavy. Seren, he said again, voice breaking. Stay with me. I smiled faintly. I'm here. He shook his head. You burned too much. You gave too much. I reached up weakly, touching his face. Then take it back. He stared at me. What do you mean? Your shadow. Your blood. It's the only thing strong enough to hold what's left of me. His eyes darkened. No. If I give you that, you'll become what I am, cursed, eternal. I already am, I said. Please. Don't let the fire die. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with trembling hands, he pressed his wrist to my lips. Forgive me. Warmth flooded my mouth, not human warmth, but something older, colder. His blood burned down my throat, mixing with the last of my flame. Light and darkness collided one final time, then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the world was quiet. The ceiling above me was unfamiliar, cracked stone, lit by a soft golden glow. My body felt strange, both heavy and light at once. My heart beat slower, but stronger. Selreth sat beside me, his expression unreadable. "You're awake," he said quietly. "What happened?" "You died," he said simply. "And then you didn't." I sat up slowly. My hands glowed faintly, gold mixed with shadow. My reflection in the glass of a broken mirror showed eyes no longer gold or grey, but molten, a mix of flame and silver. "What am I now?" I whispered. "The first of your kind," he said. "Not wolf. Not vampire. Something in between. Flame and shadow." I looked at him, my voice small. "You should have let me go." He reached out, brushing my hair from my face. "And live another eternity without you. Never again." Outside, the wind carried the smell of smoke and rain. The fortress still stood, scarred, but alive. The firewolf had fallen. The firewolf had risen again. And though I had lost a part of myself, I had gained something greater. A second life. A second chance. And a promise that the fire, once kindled, would never die. The fortress stood quiet after the storm, too quiet. Smoke rose from the broken towers, drifting across the red sky like ghosts that refused to leave. The air still smelled of ash and blood, but beneath it was something heavier, a silence that did not belong to peace. I woke in Selretha's chamber, my body heavy, my heartbeat strange. The first breath I took burned cold instead of warm. My chest rose and fell, but the rhythm felt wrong. Slow, deliberate, as if time itself waited for me to catch up. The curtains were drawn, yet I could see through the darkness as easily as day. Every sound was sharp, the drop of water from a cracked roof, the distant heartbeat of someone walking in another hall. When I moved, the shadows shifted with me, curling around my arms like living smoke. Selreth sat by the window, his cloak half undone, exhaustion etched into his face. He looked up as I stirred. "You shouldn't be awake," he said quietly. "You need time to adjust." "Adjust to what?" I asked. My voice sounded different, deeper, threaded with something that hummed beneath the words. He rose, coming to stand beside me. "To what you are now." I swung my legs over the side of the bed. "You said I died." "You did." "Then why am I here?" "Because I wouldn't let you go." He knelt before me, and I saw it, the faint glow of his blood inside my veins, silver threaded through gold. "You carry my blood now. You are both flame and shadow." I stared at my hands. The faint light beneath my skin flickered between gold and silver, pulsing in time with his heartbeat, not mine. "So I'm one of you?" "No," he said. "You're something new." The weight of his words settled slowly. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part didn't know how. "I don't feel like me anymore," I whispered. "You are still Seren," he said softly. "But the world will never see you as it once did." He stood, turning toward the window. Outside, the battlefield still smoked. The cost of sealing the void was high. The council lies dead. The fortress stands, but barely. And the rift, though closed, left something behind. "What do you mean?" "The magic leaks," he said. "The veil between realms is fragile. If it tears again," he didn't finish. I rose to my feet. My legs trembled, but strength followed soon after. "Then we fix it." His gaze met mine, steady, searching. "You died saving this realm once. Will you burn yourself a second time? If that's what it takes." He gave a faint smile. "You sound like me." We left the chamber together. The halls of Duskspire were in ruins, stone blackened, windows shattered, the great banners burned. Soldiers and servants worked in silence, rebuilding what they could. When they saw me, some bowed, others stared. None dared speak. Celine met us in the main corridor. She looked older, her armor cracked and stained. "You live," she said flatly. "Barely," I said. She studied me, her eyes narrowing. "You're different." "I know." "Then perhaps the prophecy was right," she murmured. "Fire and shadow reborn as one." Selretha's tone hardened. The prophecy means nothing now. Celine's gaze flicked toward the north. Tell that to the sky. We followed her outside. The clouds there had turned black, not stormdark, but unnatural, pulsing faintly with veins of light. The air hummed, heavy with energy. What is that? I whispered. The mark of the void, Celine said. It's trying to reopen. Selreth looked at me. It's calling to you. I felt it, the pull deep in my bones, the same whisper that had haunted my dreams since the blood eclipse. A voice that wasn't quite mine. Come back. I can stop it, I said. I can burn it out before it breaks through. No, Selreth said sharply. If you open that power again, you may not return this time. Then stay close enough to pull me back. He caught my wrist. Seren. I turned to face him fully. You gave me your blood to keep me alive. Don't waste it on fear. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he nodded slowly. Whatever happens, I stay with you. We climbed to the highest tower, where the air thinned and the wind howled through the ruins. The black clouds above swirled faster, glowing faintly red where the blood eclipse still bled through the haze. I stood at the edge of the stone platform, closing my eyes. The fire within me stirred, bright and hungry. The shadow around Selreth answered, curling toward me. When I spoke, my voice carried farther than it should have. Lunaria, I whispered. If you're watching, if this power was ever yours, show me how to end it. The wind shifted. A faint warmth spread through the air. Then I saw her, not as before, but in flamelight, standing in the sky above us. Her eyes were endless. Her voice filled everything. Endings are beginnings, she said. But every beginning demands a ruin. What does that mean? I shouted. That to save the world, you must destroy what binds it. Selretha's hand found mine. Seren. I turned, breath catching. His shadows wrapped around my fire like threads in a single weave. Then we burn it together. The power surged between us. Flames roared to life, and the shadows folded over them. The light grew until the sky itself cracked. When it ended, the clouds had vanished. The red glow faded to silver. The air stilled. But the cost was heavy. The tower beneath us crumbled. The flames retreated. I fell to my knees, gasping. Selreth knelt beside me, his hand steady but trembling. It's done. I looked up at the pale sky, the first true light I'd seen in months. We broke the blood eclipse. He smiled faintly. Then we finally won. But in the distance, thunder rolled, soft, deep, and wrong. Celine's voice carried up the stairway. The northern gate, it's gone. The void spawn, they're pouring through. Selretha's expression darkened. It's not over. I rose again, the last of my strength gathering like dying fire. Then let's finish it. The final battle began at dusk. The army that came through the broken gate was unlike anything we had seen before. The void spawn had changed, taller, darker, shaped almost like the dead they devoured. For every one we killed, 2 more crawled from the rift. The fortress shook under their assault. Magic tore through the walls like wind through leaves. Selreth led the front line, his blade cutting arcs of darkness that consumed everything they touched. I fought beside him, fire blazing bright enough to turn night into day. But even together, we were losing. For every fallen enemy, the rift widened. The air grew thin, humming with the scream of the world's breaking. Celine's voice reached us through the chaos. The Heartstone. If it shatters, Duskspire falls. I looked up. The great crystal at the center of the fortress pulsed wildly, cracking. The magic inside it was the fortress's lifeblood. If it broke, everything would collapse. I turned to Selreth. I can stabilize it. You'll die, he said. Not if you help me. He hesitated only a second before nodding. We ran together to the Heartstone chamber. The crystal towered above us, glowing violently. Cracks spidered across its surface, leaking streams of red and black light. On my mark, he said, raising his hands. His shadows climbed the walls, forming a cage of darkness around the crystal. I closed my eyes, feeling the fire within me surge. The heat rose, filling the room, until I could no longer tell where I ended and the flames began. Now, he shouted. I unleashed the fire. It poured from me in waves, flooding the chamber, wrapping the heartstone in white gold light. Selretha's shadows met it, sealing the cracks. The two forces fought at first hissing, snarling, then merged, spiraling together into something new. The light was blinding. The air split with the sound of shattering glass. Then silence. When the light faded, the crystal stood whole again. The rift was gone. I collapsed. Selreth caught me before I hit the floor. "Seren," he whispered. I tried to smile, but my voice was barely a breath. "Did it work?" "It did," he said. "You did." His shadows curled around me like a cloak, warm and protective. "Rest now." "I can't," I said softly. "If I sleep, I'll see them again." "The firewolves." I nodded weakly. "They want me to go with them." "Then tell them no." My eyes fluttered shut. "You'll need someone to keep you from brooding." He laughed, a sound half broken, half relieved. "Then stay." When I woke again, the fortress was quiet. The fires had gone out. The blood eclipse had faded entirely, leaving a pale grey dawn. Outside, the armies were gone. Only ash remained. Selreth stood at the edge of the battlements, watching the sunrise. I joined him, my footsteps silent. "They're gone," I said. "For now," he replied. He turned to me. The light caught his eyes, no longer just silver, but streaked with gold. My fire lived in him now, as his shadow lived in me. "What happens next?" I asked. He reached for my hand. "We rebuild. We rule. We protect what's left. And if the void returns..." He looked out over the quiet mountains. "Then we fight again." I smiled faintly. "You never rest, do you?" "Not while you're still breathing," he said. I leaned against him, watching the light spread across the ruins. For the first time, it wasn't red. It was warm, real sunlight. The blood eclipse was over. But as the wind shifted, I thought I heard something distant, a whisper from the ashes, low and cold. "The fire burns still. And shadows never die." I looked up at Selreth. "Do you hear that?" He smiled faintly. "Always." And though peace had come for now, I knew it would not last. The world had changed. The fire and the shadow had merged, and the balance between them would forever be fragile. But we were still standing. Together. The Firewolf Queen and the Shadow Emperor. Two halves of a story that refused to end. Weeks passed, and the fortress of Duskspire slowly began to breathe again. The broken halls were rebuilt, the shattered towers raised anew. What had once been a kingdom of fear and silence now pulsed with life, not perfect, but alive. The blood eclipse was gone, and for the first time in centuries, sunlight poured through the mountains. It was pale and uncertain, but it reached even the darkest corners of the empire. The people began to speak my name, some in awe, others in quiet defiance. Seren of Fire. The reborn queen. I didn't know what to make of it. I was still learning what I had become. Every day, I trained to control the strange balance inside me, shadow and flame, two forces that wanted to devour each other yet somehow found peace. Sometimes I felt unstoppable, other times I thought I would split apart. Selreth watched over me, though he rarely spoke of what had happened. He carried his own scars, even if he hid them well. His shadows were quieter now, less violent, more controlled, as though part of him had finally found rest. But peace never lasts long for creatures like us. Selene returned from the border one morning, her armor coated in ash. "The seer was right," she said grimly. "The prophecy wasn't finished." Selreth frowned. "Explain." She unrolled an old scroll, its surface cracked with age. The blood eclipse didn't only foretell destruction, it foretold succession. The balance of the realms cannot hold with only one ruler. Fire must sit beside shadow, or the veil will tear again. Her eyes turned to me. "It means you're not just his queen. You're his equal. The throne must be shared." I blinked, caught off guard. "That's already true, isn't it?" Selreth shook his head slowly. "Not in their eyes." Selene nodded. "Until the coronation binds you both in the eyes of the realm, the balance remains broken." I looked between them. "Then let's fix it." Selene hesitated. "The prophecy demands more than vows." It demands sacrifice. I tensed. What kind? The sharing of power, she said softly. Completely. Your magic and his must merge, joined before the Heartstone. It will either create perfect balance or destroy you both, Selreth finished. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air in the chamber grew heavy. Finally, I said, then we do it. Selreth's eyes narrowed. You don't even hesitate. We've already died once, I said. We might as well make it worth something. He almost smiled. You were supposed to be a quiet queen. I was supposed to die in the snow, I said. But fate got bored. The night of the coronation arrived beneath a sky alive with stars, not the blood red of the eclipse, but silver and gold, scattered like fire across velvet. The great hall was filled again, though not with fear this time. Vampires, wolves, and humans all stood together, uneasy, uncertain, but together nonetheless. At the center, the Heartstone pulsed with new life, glowing gold and black. Selreth stood beside me, his armor silver-edged, his cloak trailing shadow. Once this begins, there's no turning back, he said quietly. I know. And you trust me to control it. I trust that if we fall, I said softly, we fall together. He took my hand, his cold fingers steady around mine. The moment we touched, our marks blazed, flame and shadow twisting into one. The hall grew silent. Celine's voice rose, clear and unwavering. By the decree of the blood eclipse, by the will of the heavens and the void, the fire and the shadow shall be bound as one. Let the prophecy be fulfilled. The Heartstone flared. Its light enveloped us both. The bond that had once tied us burned anew, not painful but powerful threads of silver weaving through gold, twining around our souls until there was no line between them. I saw everything in that moment, his memories, his loneliness, his endless waiting. And I let him see mine, the rejection, the pain, the girl who had crawled through snow and found her purpose in the dark. The fire and shadow merged, not to destroy, but to create. The Heartstone pulsed once, twice, then exploded in light. When it faded, the air was still. The mark on my wrist was gone. In its place, a new symbol burned across both our chests, two intertwined crescents, one gold, one silver. Celine dropped to one knee. The balance is restored. The hall erupted in sound, shouts, cheers, cries of relief and disbelief. Selreth looked at me, the faintest smile curving his lips. It's done. Is it? I asked. Almost. He turned to the court. From this day forward, Seren is not my shadow, nor my flame. She is my equal, my crown, my queen. The cheers grew louder. I felt the sound shake through my bones. But deep down, under the joy and the triumph, something darker stirred, a faint echo that didn't belong. A whisper. Balance is never eternal. That night, when the celebrations ended, I found myself standing on the balcony of the highest tower. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of rain. The stars above shimmered like embers. Selreth joined me silently. You should be resting, he said. So should you. He smiled faintly. You feel it too, don't you? The change? I nodded. The world feels different. Lighter. And yet, he said softly, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't the end. I looked up at the sky. Maybe it isn't supposed to be. He turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Then whatever comes, we face it together. Always, I said. He kissed me then, not out of desperation or fear, but peace. A promise sealed in silence. And for the first time, the fire inside me didn't burn. It simply warmed. Years passed. The world healed slowly. The scars left by war faded, replaced by growth. Duskspire became more than a fortress, it became a sanctuary. Wolves, vampires, and humans lived side by side, wary at first, then with cautious trust. Under the twin crowns of shadow and flame, peace reigned. But time, as ever, whispered reminders that peace was fragile. The blood eclipse had vanished, but the moon never forgot how to bleed. I stood in the garden one evening, the air filled with the scent of night-blooming flowers. My reflection shimmered faintly in the black pool before me, hair streaked with pale silver now, eyes the color of molten dawn. I looked both mortal and eternal. Footsteps approached behind me. "You're restless," Selreth said. I smiled. "You can sense that from anywhere in the fortress." "I can sense you," he corrected. "Always." He stood beside me, his presence calm as ever. "The stars are quiet tonight." "Too quiet," I said. "The moon feels strange." He frowned, following my gaze upward. The crescent moon hung low, pale and silver. But as we watched, a thin line of red began to creep across it. My chest tightened. "No." Selretha's hand found mine. "It can't be." The red deepened, spreading like ink through water. The moon darkened until it glowed the same bloody hue I remembered from that night in the snow. The blood eclipse had returned. Around us, the air thickened. The torches flickered, their flames bending toward the sky as if pulled by unseen hands. Celine ran into the courtyard, her expression grim. "It's starting again," she said. The seer's final words, they spoke of cycles, not endings. I looked at Selreth. "What does it want this time?" "Balance," he said softly. "It always wants balance. It gives, then takes." The pool before us rippled, its surface glowing faintly. A reflection appeared, not ours, but something else. The image of a figure cloaked in shadow and light, its eyes like twin suns. The voice that followed was both ancient and familiar. "Every piece demands a price. Every fire casts a shadow." "Lunaria," I whispered. The reflection smiled faintly. "You restored what was broken. But the world will always test its saviors." "What are we supposed to do?" I asked. "Remember who you are," she said. "And who you were never meant to be." The water went still. The reflection vanished. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. Selreth turned to me. "If the eclipse has returned, then the cycle begins anew. Then we fight anew," I said. He smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. "You never learn fear, do you?" "Fear's just another kind of fire," I said. "You can let it burn you, or you can make it light the way." He laughed softly. "Then light it again, my queen." I looked up at the crimson moon. "Always." The wind carried our vow into the night. And as the first drop of scarlet light touched the earth, the world trembled not with dread, but with anticipation. Because this time, the Firewolf and the Shadow Emperor were not running from destiny. They were walking straight into it. The moon bled. The stars burned. And somewhere in the darkness between, our story, began again. The story you've just heard was one of pain, power, and rebirth, but not all fires fade when the battle ends. Some keep burning, waiting for someone brave enough to feed the flame. Seren's journey, from exile to queen, from broken heart to unbreakable soul, reminds us that even in the darkest night, we can be our own light. So if her story touched you, if you felt her fire and her fight, don't let it end here. Subscribe, comment below, and tell me, what would you sacrifice for destiny? The next chapter waits beyond the shadows, and when the blood moon rises again, you'll want to be here to see what it awakens.